A few technical difficulties, and Meg is here, but she's not. She's not. She's not still, as it's showing on the screen. She's moving on my screen, as is normal with all this tech. You're back. There we go.
Am I back? Amazing.
There you are. See, when you do this and you've got 15 minutes to prep and half an hour like we have been, it's always the case. Hey. But there we go. We're here. Good morning, everyone that has joined us. Thanks for staying with us for a few minutes while we sorted all of that out. This is the Friday morning live. You may realise that we're doing quite a few live sessions at the moment. So this is the Friday morning. So every Friday morning, 8:30, we sit and we chat about all things humanising the world of work. What's happened in the world? What's happened with our clients? You know, what are we hearing? What research has been out this week? But this week we thought we'd do something different because we have been running live sessions all week. So every day at midday, and that will continue actually until the 7th of May. So we will continue doing those live sessions. But Meg and I were chatting, and welcome Meg, because this is the first one that you're doing.
Yeah,
which is awesome. So we just thought, hey, let's summarise and let's talk about some of the key takeaways from the week. There's been 4 sessions so far, and obviously another one that's going to happen today at midday. So we just thought, didn't we? Let's just talk about some of the key sessions that have happened, some of the key learnings, and I think you've given me homework to do over the weekend as well.
Of course.
So let's do that. I don't know if you want to say a quick intro, Meg, but
yeah, I can do. I'm really conscious of my tech or connection.
It's all okay at the moment, yeah.
But it's happened to me before, especially like I've had one recent meeting, and I'm quite expressive with my face, and so getting stuck on like really weird facial expressions. So I'm so embarrassed that if people are going to find me stuck in something. But we've been talking about being authentic all week and being vulnerable and open to mistakes. So I'm hoping we can just carry on. But yeah, hi everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Megan. I'm a business psychologist by trade. And I lead on the public sector work here at Bailey & French, and I'm delighted to be here this morning. Thank you for having me. We've had so much fun with the lives all week. Really, it's been quite
busy,
nice to see people we know really well and value their expertise, but get to share that with other people. And I was chatting to you this morning as well about how there's so many like 2-person podcasts that got me through lockdown as well. So it's so nice that we get to have a go too and see what wisdom we can share with other people.
I loved you came in this morning and you're like, have you seen this podcast, How to Fail? And I just thank you for always bringing those little nuggets of information into my world, because it really is awesome. And that's what we wanted to do today, right? So, and it's been great, as you said, to hear from some of those people. We've heard from Grace and Lindsay and Taz and Katie yesterday, and many more to come actually. So we started off, didn't we, with human leadership and kind of summarising how do we look at emotional intelligence maybe with a slightly different lens of humanising and what does it actually mean in practice. And then we kind of covered off the stages of emotional intelligence, right? So we started off with self-awareness, and Lindsay was talking about strengths and purpose and passion. Then we looked at other awareness with Taz, which was an awesome session as well. And she looked at all things vulnerability and inclusion and really trying to think about others and build strong connections with others. And then we built on that actually yesterday with Katie, which was great. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a few sessions, right?
Yeah, and I've learned so much, and it's I don't know if you ever get this when you're listening to podcasts or even when you're listening to radio and you're like, it sounds like they're talking to me. This is what I've experienced, or this is what I've seen with, people I've worked with, clients and the problems that people bring forward in workshops of like, this is happening and I have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
And I think I was almost going to talk about that today around like, this is so much harder in practice than it is in real, than it is to like just chat about, oh yeah, we'll be vulnerable, we'll be authentic, we'll own all our mistakes. Yeah. And actually it's just not a perfect world. And I think you touched on that yesterday with Katie, didn't you, around like, sometimes that's where learning in the classroom doesn't quite translate out into the real world. And it's like, actually, it's way more difficult, and almost acknowledging that for people.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I was saying this to one of the team earlier in the week. they kind of said, yeah, this is a really good session. This is a really good session. And now you've said it out live onto the internet for the world to see. You now have to continually practice these behaviors. That's a really good point, actually. I hadn't thought about that. You know, and maybe that's the point, and that's what Katie and I were touching on yesterday, wasn't it? It was actually, you do just have to say things out loud and try things, and maybe practice them in a safe environment. But do try and test and learn and grow and approach it in that growth mindset. What's been your favorite? What's been your favorite piece? And I know that's a really difficult question, right? Because they've all been, and they've all had little gems, little nuggets of, and if you haven't watched them yet, please go back, you know, via the Bailey and French consulting page, go and have a look at some of the, there's little bite-sized tips and bits, and you'll see all the comments that pop up with links and really good insights. But so it's a difficult question, Meg, sorry to put you on the spot, but what's been your favorite piece?
Oh gosh, it's really, that's a really challenging question, and we have been glued to them all week. And yeah, I would agree with you in what you're saying. So I'm not really answering the question; I'm avoiding it nearly. But they're half an hour long, so they're perfect for people with very low attention spans like me. So you can just play it out loud. I was playing one out loud this morning doing the ironing. So they're quite digestible, I guess. But I don't know. I think your session yesterday with Katie is what stuck with me, probably because of the recency effect, but also because it was a really good conversation, and it just made me think. It made me almost think about all the sessions that I've gone before, and also other things that I've been learning this week. I don't know if you were there for where a lot of us are back in the office now in a COVID safe environment. But we came across some slides and statistics during the week of lots of things about like what people want from leaders at the moment, and it was really, really, really good research. But I was blown away by a statistic of 13% of non-managers want to be a manager. And I know not everyone would want to be a manager. I understand that completely. I just didn't know it was as low as 13%. And we had a really good conversation in the office, but it really linked into what you were saying yesterday with Katie, or what you and Katie were discussing yesterday around, it was actually Brené Brown stuff and like entering into the arena. And actually that's a really brave thing to do. And instead of being a critic at the back, to actually step forward. And it made me think about that statistic and being like, well, here's 20 slides and what everyone wants from leaders, and yet only 13% of people who are not a leader so far are willing to step into the arena. Tell me more. Like, I just want to go out and talk to all those people about why and why not. So that really stood out to me of like, it is scary, and it is a lot to put yourself out there. And it's so easy to talk about it and so much harder to put it into practice, and almost acknowledging that. And that's where a lot of my work is actually connecting leaders in workshops to say that out loud, to share that vulnerability, to say, this is something I'm finding challenging. And someone else goes, me too. And say, oh yeah, I had that before, and this is what I did, and that didn't really work. So if I was doing it again, this is how I do it. And so not just having a coach to work that through with, which is really valuable, or listen to things like this where we're giving information and sharing about what you might be able to do, but actually connecting with people who also find this hard. And it's a really lonely place, being a leader, being a manager, regardless of kind of what level we're talking about. Like, we're talking about obviously all the way up to CEOs, but all the way down to line managers who are just kind of squeezed in the middle. So how can we connect people up and say, yeah, it is hard, and it's not just reading a good leadership book. There are lots of emotions, and it's tough, and I don't know, I mean, we're here for you, like, we're here for each other. How can we do more of that? I don't know if I've answered your question now. I'm just going to ramble, but
no, you absolutely. It's a really interesting one, and like you say, I really want to unpack that statistic, and maybe we don't go through it all today, but the session today is going to be around human connectors. So taking that relationship management side of the emotional intelligence, but actually at the human level, how are we tapping into not just, hey, how are you feeling today, and how does that situation make you feel, but actually how do we connect with someone's story, and also therefore how do you tell your own story so that people do connect with you on a more deeper level, so that maybe then people don't feel so lonely, so that they feel like they can connect with other managers, with other people, friends, even, anyone in your network. We talk about, don't we, the kind of development board, or the people that you have around you, or support network, whatever words and phrases you have for it. How can you tap into each one of those, and how do they play maybe a different role for you as a leader, so that you don't feel alone?
Yeah. And the role of strengths as well came out a lot this
Yeah,
week in all the I think it came up in every conversation. Is that
yeah,
right to say?
yeah, yeah.
And I've even noticed it ourselves in our own team. And I'll share it that we had a couple of mistakes this week, like every other human being that experienced life this week. And the role of, like, say, humor in that, which is one of my own.
Yeah.
It's really brave to say humor is one of your strengths, isn't it? If you're not actually that funny, but I enjoy humor. And actually the role of that, and saying, you know what, I'm going to have a good laugh at this because
Yeah,
that's all I can do right now, and then I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to take accountability, but also I'm going to laugh at this and say this is what I did, and I'm going to be open about it.
yeah,
And I was saying to you previously, LinkedIn kind of piece that I saw before was a an I'm not going to say it on LinkedIn Live. My mother might be watching, but an F up board, and put all your F ups as a team on that, and like how we can kind of. Well, you were saying something interesting about that, actually, about like the balance of doing that.
yeah. Because
Key
and
story.
yeah, and it's a really interesting one that I've balanced with for a while, because for me, I have always celebrated, um, because I feel like there is a lot of learning in failure.
Hmm.
So I will consciously go, didn't know that, because almost by saying it out loud, I'm highlighting it and writing it down, and making a note to go and find out or connect with someone, and understand
Hmm.
it. And I guess it's a self-improvement strength. It's a self-development strength, right? I continuously want to learn and develop. But then you've also got the balance of that, where we know that high performance is only as high as your lowest tolerance level, right?
Yeah.
So then how do you create a culture of super high performance? And when you hear about all the sports teams and top high performing teams out there, you know that they've got such a high bar of performance. So how
Yeah.
do you get that balance of, yeah, we need trust and psychological safety to be able to celebrate something that's maybe not gone wrong. But then what happens next, and what do you do? And that's what we were talking about this morning, wasn't it? It's,
Yeah.
well, there's one element of it which is highlight it and celebrate it and thank you for sharing, and actually in sharing you've made it safe for others to share theirs. So you've created space to learn, but now what?
Hmm.
And maybe that's the difference between getting it right and getting it slightly wrong,
Yeah.
if there is such a thing.
Yeah. It makes me think of. I've often talked about, even in the mental health space, which I do positive psychology well-being, so it's slightly different angle, but that we've done so much campaigning across the country, across the world, on open up and just talk, but we're not teaching people how to listen necessarily. And now we're saying make mistakes and own them, but we're not teaching. And I'm saying teaching, but like facilitating and, like, coaching. I'm not really saying like that I know and I'm going to impart that wisdom to someone else, because I don't. But we'll explore it. But are we learning how to respond to mistakes?
Yeah,
And we're saying be vulnerable, but are we helping people understand, what do you do when someone's being vulnerable with you? How do you respond to that? So it's just like we're saying, oh, go and dare and be this and step into it, and no one really knows what to do after the first step of just saying, oh,
yeah,
this happened,
yeah,
or this is how I feel.
yeah,
What's expected of everybody else?
yeah,
So it's almost like, well, what's the next step on? And I think that's probably a little bit of my homework. We were talking about that. We're going to have a
yeah.
highlight and a homework. And
I
I
mean,
think
you have homework for me.
I think that's fine. It's like, how do we explore that with people? So my first piece is to go off and explore more of Brené Brown stuff. I mean, I know a lot of her stuff already, but I don't listen to as much of her podcasts as I'd like to. So I think I'm going to be catching up on laundry this week and listening to her podcast, because that's what I do. I like to multitask. Um, and almost explore that of like, what's the second step? And that's for leaders when they're peer supporting, but for teams when they might be
Yeah,
managing upwards, or whatever you want to
yeah,
call it. what do we do with that information once
Yeah.
they've revealed it or the mistake? And oh, perfect timing, Sally. We've got a comment in to say it's so important to be prepared psychological safety wise. So that's it. Like even exploring, do people have the bandwidth to listen to me right now? Um, do people, you know, want to listen to this? No, they're all busy with work right now. The last thing they need is me coming in with a, a truck of emotions or information or workload or whatever that is. So I guess
Yeah.
it's tuning into others, which is what we've been exploring all week.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's the thing, right? So if you're a leader watching this right now, maybe be having have a think about what your response is. Because again, coming back to the emotional intelligence piece, noticing and being conscious in that first instant is and highlighting, oh, actually, I hadn't thought about what we've just talked about, right? So if you're a leader, notice when someone's telling you, I've really not done a good job here, and you're celebrating it. But then, what do you do about it? What are actions next? And if you're a coach, or if you work with people and you're in a facilitation role, how are you spreading that message, and how are you sharing what people can be thinking about? Because I don't think there's necessarily a right and a wrong way, but there are probably many ways. It's like receiving a compliment, isn't it? It's weird. It
Which we're
feels
great
awkward.
at, you and I, Ant. We're
Yeah,
amazing
oh,
at
all the time.
taking.
Yeah, of course. Especially when the sun's so bright.
You're shining right now. It's lovely. Sorry, go on.
But it is, right? It feels a bit unnatural when you don't necessarily know how to respond. So try some different things and see what the reaction is, and try and gauge therefore performance after that. What happens? We've talked about a lot this week throughout the sessions, intent and impact. So if you intend to celebrate, failure as much as success, because that's part of the growth and the learning, that's awesome. What's the impact? Be curious, learn. I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so delighted that psychological safety is coming up in the comments. Because good news, that's what the live is about today at 12 o'clock. So please come back here at 12 o'clock and you'll see two experts exploring that. That's exciting.
Yeah,
What was your highlight, and
yeah, good. And you've touched on it. It's the strengths element.
mm,
You've touched on it because we talked about it all the way through all of the different sessions. But I think the piece that I took away the most, and it came up a little bit yesterday in Katie's session, it was definitely there in Lindsay's session, and was kind of more subtly but definitely prevalent in the other sessions,
yeah,
which was the strengths give you the confidence, right? So knowing and the timing, it's energy management. We talk a lot about time management, but not necessarily about energy management, where, okay, if I'm going to be having a conversation with someone where I want to be my best self in that situation, what am I doing prior to that to make sure my energy levels are high enough for me to feel great going into that and feeling like I'm at my best? Because right now, let's face it, the majority of time, we're probably not at our best. But we have control over some elements of that, right? We don't have control over everything, but we can influence maybe how we feel a little bit. Even just having a great conversation with someone who really gets you and understands you. Maybe if you've got a relationship building strength, that's the thing that you do for 10 minutes before you jump into that next conversation. So for me, it's just awareness of energy that I feel in that moment, and then using that to be my best self and to close that gap on intent and impact. I think it wasn't necessarily said in exactly those words throughout, but that's what I took away from the conversations all
I
week.
I think everyone from this week is going to have to forgive us for grossly misquoting at different times, but it's important that we're kind of sharing back what we've heard from other people. I love that, and there's something as well about overplaying strengths as well, and knowing if you'll end up with I have an empathy strength, I end up overplaying that in a one-to-one then when I need to have a difficult conversation. So actually, like, also being aware of that and saying, what other strengths can I tune into as well to try and balance that out? And um yeah, feeling confident in yourself, because
Yeah,
no one's was it yesterday that was said, or was it earlier on in the week? And it was like, no one's expecting you to know everything. That's not it at
yeah,
all. Um, so how can we take strength from our strengths?
yeah, yeah. Nice. That's a quote.
There we go. There's a soundbite for you.
Someone write it down quick before we misquote it next week. Yeah, I think it's exactly that, and the curiosity piece. And I guess one of the things I would, and next week I know we're going to be talking a little bit more practically about the different elements of teams and practical ways that teams can engage. There's a lot of recent kind of data and research around team flow. So we've got individual flow, and we know roughly what that means. You know, it's when you feel in that state of greatness and time flies by and you feel really confident, right? So how do you get your teams to be feeling like that a little bit more often? Because you can't be doing that all the time. It's just unrealistic expectation, but you can do those little habits every day, right? As a team, to make sure we all play to each other's strengths. And but I'm conscious, as a critic, I said this yesterday, as a critic watching this, if I'm a leader, if I'm someone who's maybe a bit more traditional, or someone who's new to psychological safety, or maybe is in an environment where all of these things seem fluffy, or they don't seem like they're able to be done in that environment that they're in, right? I don't know. Do you have any advice? What do you do with your clients? What are some of the ways that we can start to make this not sound like a fluffy conversation, but actually as a real practical, tangible conversation that we all should be having?
Well, that's it. And I think that's why I started by talking about, like, this is difficult. No one's saying that we go around from 9 to 5 talking about our well-being every day, and that's not what happens. They're really hard, complex issues to tackle at work. That's why it's called work.
Yeah.
It's not about achieving this every day. It's not about getting into flow every day. But are you aware of that? Where did you get into flow in the last week? What part of work did you really enjoy, and why? Have you shared that? If you experienced that with another person, have you shared that? So no one's asking for this, like, I get up at 5 a.m. and I meditate and then I go off and I become a great leader. And it's I just don't believe anyone who comes on and says that happens. It's not realistic. So we talk about this in an idealistic way at times. How can you have one moment in the day that you can take for a little bit of positive psychology, for a little bit of gratitude, or a little bit, I'm proud of this, or I know I accomplished this and I'm happy. And then that starts to ripple out, because we do replicate other people's behaviors, because that's what role modeling is. So I'd say kind of take faith in that, like, just because we all talk about this and explore it, that it's like we fly and sail through life like mindfully discussing topics with people every day. That's not quite real life. It's 4 minutes till 9. What happened, Ed?
I know.
What do you think?
It happens every single week. It surprised me yesterday as much as it did the first time that I did it. I think you're absolutely right, and I think it is. I like what you said about just make that one behavior difference. The research is out there, so if you're wondering, well, what's the impact? What's the point of being grateful in the morning? What's the point of building psychological safety? I encourage you to answer your own questions by having a look. Maybe look back at some of the other sessions that we've done. There's a lot of research out there on the impact of this stuff. But I like the idea that there is this moral reason that you should be doing it. Humanity and humanizing the world of work is a moral thing as well. What world do we want to live in the future? Because you doing a bit of mindfulness or positive psychology, as you said, in the morning, anything that you've learned from us or from anyone else, you making that one habit difference is the difference between someone in your team going off and doing it with someone else. And then we've talked, haven't we, a lot in the office about the impact on parenting and the impact on your what you do in society. You bring all of these positive emotions, not just from you to your team to therefore make profit. This is actually about you, your team, their family, the society that we live in, and the future of work. I definitely encourage anyone watching who's going, why? This all seems very high level or fluffy. What's the point? Go and find out the answer to that question, because it's a great question to be asking.
I often, not often, but when I'm challenged like that, sometimes I say, prove me wrong. Go try it out for a week and tell me it didn't work for you. I don't mind.
Yeah,
Like, and
100%.
it's individual as well to you. With 2 minutes to go, Ant, what's your
Yes.
homework for the weekend? You know I'm not going to let you off the hook on
Well,
that.
so I've written how to fail, circled it. Who was what was the podcast? Who was it?
It's Elizabeth Day. I'm a huge fan. There's some really like key ones that are pandemic related actually that were launched back in March 2020, but it's quite regular, and it's three failures from a
Brilliant.
different interviewee every week. And I
Brilliant.
encourage people, because it's that celebration of failure and saying it's not just I can't remember the tagline. I'm going to misquote it. I'm sorry, Elizabeth Day. If you're watching, please email me. Um, but it's not like it's not just about coping with the failure or like getting over it. It's like actually learning how to fail is what makes us better and more successful. And so it's recounting like over someone's life so far what
Yeah,
what is like not just failures I'm happy I made, because some of them actually are like no, they were just failures. Um, but what I've learned from them. So
amazing.
it's really
And what to do with it, and how to react, how to respond, so that we're not lowering the bar of performance. We're just, I guess, progressing and learning and growing and enjoying the journey. Right, that's what it's all about. All right. Well, it's 9 o'clock. Nearly 1 minute to
oh
go.
my gosh.
I encourage anyone who's been listening to this, log on at midday if you've got the time. If not, all of these sessions are recorded on the Bailey and French Consulting page. So follow us, and then you will get notifications for when they pop up, and you'll be able to access all of the previous ones. And also, don't forget, all next week. So every day, midday, those live sessions are happening. And we'll be back this time next week, 8:30 on a Friday, every Friday. We share little learnings and tidbits, and we'll probably summarize next week's sessions as well. So thank you for joining. That was just really good. And thanks, Meg, for joining this morning.
Thank you for having me. Thanks everybody, and have a lovely Friday and happy weekend.
Happy weekend. Yeah. Bye.